All right, guys, welcome to the Happy Wife School show. I'm not seeing my video come up. It's doing an interesting thing I haven't seen before. There we go. I can see myself now. All right. Well, happy Saturday, everyone, or Sunday, depending on where you're joining from. Excited about today's show. We're going to answer some really great questions that I got from a woman, I believe probably whose husband shared my videos with her, and questions that a lot of women have watching my content. So I'm excited to get into that today, and it's really going to explain for the good men who watch and try to share my videos, it's really going to explain why your wife won't watch my videos. So we're going to get into a lot of really, really great things today, and looking forward to it. Before I get started, just a couple of announcements. Be sure to check out the Happy Wife School on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Give it a rating or review if you feel called to. That helps people find the podcast on those platforms. And I would really appreciate that support. Also, if you haven't, please check out my colleague Josie's YouTube channel, The Autoimmune Expert, where she teaches people to permanently heal from chronic illnesses and permanently heal from autoimmune disorders by working on your emotional state. So if you or someone you know struggles with an autoimmune disorder like chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, or a chronic illness like chronic migraines or depression or anxiety or chronic pain, you want to go check out The Autoimmune Expert. You can find the link to her channel in the description below on this video. And with that being said, I'm going to hop over to the chat for a minute, make sure you guys can hear me and see me okay. Also want to say thank you so much for being patient. This video and topic brought up some things for me that I needed to look at and resolve before I came live. As always, when I'm late, that is typically the reason. So I appreciate your patience and waiting for me to be ready. So I'm going to, like I said, just make sure you guys can see me loud and clear. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate you putting that in multiple times because it always catches my eyes, and then I know everything is good. So Luke, great to have you. Monica, so nice to have you. And a big shout out to all the women who join on this Saturday live, like Colleen. Thank you. Troy, great to see you. Luke's here. Troy, I love your comment. It's always a good episode when Karen is late. It's going to be real. He knows what's going on behind the scenes when I'm behind. So thank you so much for that. And of course, our champions of the chat, Steve and Phil, holding the chat down as the moderators. Thank you guys so much. Make their job easy. Please be respectful in the chat. Of course, disagreements and debate is welcome, but keep it respectful and kind of each other. Keep it on topic. That makes their job a lot easier. And yeah, with that being said, let's get started. So, all right, we've got some places to go today, guys. We've got some places to go. So I got some questions from a female viewer that I want to answer, because this is a female viewer who is concerned about my content, concerned about my message, and the questions just by nature were more negative and critical of my message and what I teach. Understandable, because what I teach is easily misunderstood by women, because I keep the focus on women and how we are the problem in a relationship or a marriage with a good man because of the behaviors that we bring into the relationship that I call our woman ways. And as women, in our thinking and cultural perspective of a marriage being 50-50, we want to look at, but what about him? What about his issues? What about his contributions to the problems? And that's understandable, and that's where we get stuck as women. So I'm really excited for these questions. I really thank this woman for sending them in to me and giving me the opportunity to talk about a lot of really important aspects of what the Happy Wife School is all about. I think this is going to be a great video for people to get a broad understanding of what I teach, why I teach it, who it's for, who it's not for, and an understanding for good men why your wife won't watch my videos, and having a perspective to understand why they're so triggering and what's really going on underneath in our wiring as women, that we are so quick to push them away. And maybe the men watching whose wives have been open to my videos, you can see how blessed and fortunate you are. And for the women who watch and are here every Saturday and are doing the work, the women who have taken my courses or are enrolled in my courses, and you might be listening to this to know how courageous you are, and that it really is a gift within you to want to see the things that I talk about that you can relate to want to work on yourself, and to not push my message away, and to go in that's very special. And so this is for you too, to see, wow, I could have taken a different path in my husband sharing Karen's videos, and some women find my content organically and are like, whoa, this is me. To know you could have gone the other direction of shutting it down and being stuck, being triggered by it, and never gotten on the other side of that. So kudos to you. So let me read the question, and then that's going to be the jumping off point for the different areas that we'll go today, that these questions afford the opportunity to talk about these really important aspects of what I teach and what my content and message is all about. So here's what a woman wrote into me. I have a lot of concern regarding your content. It is far from balanced and probably does more damage than good. Where do you get your research? What studies support your content? Do you address any form of accountability for men? Have you been abused in the past? Do you have healthy relationships with women? These are sincere questions I have, and I hope you reply. So this is the jumping off point for today. Are these questions, which I will get to and expand on a little bit, are reasonable. They're valid questions. They're reasonable and valid questions, legitimate questions for women to ask about me and my content when they find it or their husbands share it with them. So the first place I want to go before I specifically answer the questions is actually right up front, answering or giving men the answer right up front of why your wife won't watch my videos. We're going to get into some more reasons later in the video, but right up front, the biggest reason why your wife won't watch my videos and where these questions come from, understandably, I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about triggers. Because as women, when we watch my content, or women watch my content, I create my content and live it in my own life and have to look at myself. We get triggered. It's reasonable to assume that this woman asking these questions, because they're negative and critical and skeptical in nature, it's reasonable to assume that she was triggered. And it's reasonable to assume that every woman gets triggered when they watch my content, because even I get triggered and have to work through my issues when I plan my content each week. So I do this Saturday show. It's the basis of all the content I produce, the shorts, the clips, the videos. I do one of these a week, just about. And I get triggered. And I've been working on myself and my marriage and what I call the woman ways for over 10 years now. And I've looked at a lot of what I teach, and I've looked at a lot of what I talk about. And I still have, we call it a kind of gross word, but pus pockets that I have to look at each week. So if I'm getting triggered when I'm planning my content, it's reasonable to assume that when women watch my content, they get triggered. Just kind of like part and parcel with my message. So let me explain what a trigger is, because a trigger or triggers happen all the time in our lives. They're so pervasive, they go undetected, and we can show up in our triggers in different ways. So they often go undetected, and we don't even realize when we're triggered, which is the whole purpose of a trigger. And it's a common pervasive experience that we have not only as women, but as humans. It's just part of life. So let me first define what a trigger is. I'm going to give an example, and then we'll bring it back to these questions. So a trigger is something. It could be a statement somebody says. It could be a picture. It could be an idea. It could be an ideological belief. It could be an event. It could be an interaction with another person. But it's something that causes a negative internal defensive reaction that serves as a protective mechanism to not have to see something negative about ourselves. I'm going to say that again, kind of a mouthful. A trigger is something like a statement, a picture, an idea, an ideological belief, an event, an interaction that causes a negative internal defensive reaction that serves as a protective mechanism to not have to see something negative about ourselves. So a trigger is something that would cause us to be vulnerable and cause us to see something that we don't want to see about ourselves. So I'm going to give a common example of a trigger. When your boss finds fault or a mistake in work that you have produced. The trigger, when your boss confronts you about a mistake or finding fault in a piece of work you produced, the trigger is you don't want to see in yourself that you've made a mistake. So in that trigger and being in that defensive, protective mode to not have to see something about yourself instead of seeing it and owning up to making a mistake, in a trigger, you blame your boss for correcting you or blame him for what he didn't do to support you to take the project or the work in the right direction. And that's the protective mechanism of the trigger and getting defensive so that you do not have to look at yourself for the mistake that you made. That's a really, really common trigger that we've all experienced. So what happens in that when we are triggered, we are unable to see the reality or the truth of the situation. And the trigger, our response is filtered through the blaming and looking at somebody else, not looking at ourselves and looking at the truth of what the situation really was. So using that example of getting triggered when your boss calls you out for a mistake you made or finds fault in something that you did in your work, someone would go to their friends, go to their families, complain about their boss and how awful their boss was and be in their story of how their boss was in the wrong and what he did, instead of looking inward and saying, I did make that mistake. I took shortcuts. I rushed it. I didn't really give any effort into what I was doing. I just wanted to get it over with. That's what it would look like to feel the trigger of, oh, I got called out by my boss. I feel that. And then having to go in and see the reality of the situation, which is I made a mistake. I didn't do a good job. But as humans, we get defensive and we stay stuck in the trigger, and how we respond to a trigger when we're not willing to go in and see the truth and reality of the situation. You have to recognize then there is no truth or reality of our perception, because again, the trigger is a protective mechanism, so we don't have to look at ourselves. So when I do my videos each week, I have to resolve the triggers that come up in me in the topics that I'm presenting on and teaching about, of what I don't want to see through myself. And it's really important. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I don't catch something. I might get done with my video and like there's something unsettled in there and I have to do some work afterward. But most of the time I work through the triggers, because once I work through them, I have a fresh and clear perspective about what I'm teaching that I wouldn't be able to have if I was stuck in a trigger and not wanting to see something about myself in the concept that I'm teaching. So for today, in the questions that I read that were critical and negative of my work coming from a woman, the trigger in it for me today is that when I was stuck in the trigger and in that defensive protective mode within myself, I felt like she was criticizing me for what I do, and I felt attacked. And what I had to look at in myself then is how uncomfortable I still am in being criticized. Even if and she was pretty kind. It wasn't she wasn't attacking me. They were pretty level-headed, legitimate questions. But I still, in that trigger, I felt wrong. So I was saying, that's me. She didn't do that to me. That's my own weakness and crack in my foundation of still being uncomfortable being criticized, still feeling uncomfortable, people not liking my message. That's about me, not what anyone or anything is doing to me. So then by working through that, then I could see her questions are valid. They're totally reasonable and legitimate. And this is why triggers in life, triggers are a gift. I have been taught triggers are my friend. They're uncomfortable. I don't always want to go there. They're exposing. Sometimes I'd rather, go bury my head in the sand and suppress it and not look at it. But triggers really are our friend, because they're a window into ourselves to be able to learn and grow and outgrow behaviors and negative feelings and perspectives we have that limit us in our lives. And the triggers we feel as women with the concepts that I teach, and having to look at ourselves and put that window on ourselves, that is the primary reason that for the good men who watch my channel and share my videos with your wives, the triggering aspect of having to look at ourselves and then getting stuck in those triggers, that's the primary reason that your wives get angry or won't watch my videos, is they're stuck in their triggers and they don't really have a way to see through that or work through that. That's why I teach what I teach and why I have my courses, because we have to be taught to have that self-awareness and go in and say, oh, what's that in me? So that was the first place that I wanted to go before getting into and answering the different questions. So I'm going to come back to the questions now after teaching a little bit about what a trigger is, because that's why your wives won't watch my videos. And we are going to get into also 7 reasons why your wives won't watch my videos. But first, we're going to answer these questions today and really give a foundation of what Happy Wife School is all about. So I'm going to read the questions again, since that was just a few minutes ago. But the questions that I got were, where do you get, your content's far from balanced, probably does more damage than good. Where do you get your research? What studies support your content? Do you address any form of accountability for men? Have you been abused in the past? And then finally, do you have healthy relationships with women? So again, thank you for the opportunity to answer these questions. And just, these are reasonable, legitimate questions for women to ask about me and my content. They're very valid. So this woman is asking these questions on behalf of all the other women whose husbands have sent my videos and they watch and are offended or won't watch and get really upset because on the surface, I'm not balanced. On the surface, I'm not balanced. I am putting the focus purposely and with good intention on how as women, we are the problem in a relationship with a good man. And that's why my channel is called The Red Pill for Women, because these are the behaviors that we deny in ourselves that no one points out. No one holds women accountable. It's very commonplace and the fabric of our culture in talking about relationships is for women to focus on men and women to focus on their husbands and how they are the problem. No one's holding women accountable and having us look at our issues and our problems that we bring into the relationship. So on the surface, it looks unbalanced because I'm red pilling women and shining the light and exposing some of our deepest, darkest secrets as women that no one talks about. And so on the surface, it does look unbalanced, but that's why it's really important right off the bat in answering these questions to understand that my message is for women married to good men. And good men are hardworking, responsible, loving, kind, gentle-hearted, just want their wives to be happy, are constantly trying to do everything they know to do for their wives to be happy. And my message is for just normal, everyday couples, just normal, everyday couples with common, everyday marital issues. My message is not for abusive, aggressive relationships with complex, extreme issues and problems. So my message and content are not appropriate for all relationships and marriages. But what I also do know in answering these questions is that most women marry good men. Because when we get married, we want stable, we want predictable, and so we choose good men to marry. And that's why for women listening and for the woman who asked these questions and the other women out there that have these questions, you have to think back to the man you married and who you were marrying and said yes to in a proposal. Because why we are the problem with a good man is that as women, we live in our marriages as victims, blaming our husbands for the issues and problems and constantly having the focus on them, what our husbands need to change, what they're doing wrong. And through that lens of being a victim, we can only see the negative. And what that does to a good man is to constantly shame him, make him feel bad and wrong, which weakens him. I call that emasculation. And in a marriage, when we're emasculating our husbands and making them the problem and constantly blaming them, over time, they begin to withdraw. They begin to become distant. They react negatively to how they are being treated. So they might yell, they might argue, they might say hurtful things that they would never say, in ways they would never react if we weren't constantly shaming them and making them wrong and bad for who they are. So for women listening, you can't look to the man you're married to, well, you can't look to who your husband's become in the marriage as a result of us constantly blaming them and emasculating them and manipulating them for them to be the problem. You must think back to the man you fell in love with and the man you decided to marry, because I promise you, he hasn't changed. He's still there. And when you take responsibility and show up and take accountability for your part and role and change those issues and patterns you bring into the relationship, if the marriage is not too far gone, your good man will be right there waiting for you. That's what happens. So these questions are a really good moment to understand what I teach and why I teach what I teach, which is going to answer what I'm about to get into. And the foundation of what the Happy Wife School is all about is going to begin to answer where I get my research, what studies support my content, and do I address any form of accountability for men? So that's where we're going now, is answering those questions. To answer those questions, you have to understand what I teach. I teach a concept that I call the psychology of relationships. That every relationship is a reflection of me. The psychology of relationships says every relationship is a reflection of me. What the psychology of relationships does is it puts the responsibility on an individual's shoulders and puts us into what I call camp take responsibility. As long as we are looking out to another person and blaming them for our experience of the relationship, we make ourselves trapped, powerless, and unable to change because we're waiting for someone else to change our experience of the relationship, which is futile. So in camp take responsibility is I am the problem. Therefore, I am the solution, which empowers us to be able to change and move forward because we can stop being a victim and putting the blame onto the other person of our experience of the relationship. What happens is that when I change, the relationship changes. Or when I change, my experience of the relationship changes. So what I teach is pragmatic and based in common sense that I have to be responsible for changing myself, that I have no control over another. I only have control over me. So that's true for everyone, every person, every human, is that we have to be responsible for changing ourselves in a relationship and that we have no control over another person. We only have control over ourselves, which is very, very different than traditional counseling, very different than traditional evidence-based couples counseling, because those models are based on codependency and being a victim. Someone else is responsible for how I experience me and how I show up in my life. And the codependency in couples counseling and traditional relationship and marriage models in the therapeutic community is based on codependency, meaning if you change to meet my needs and be who I need you to be for me, the issues will get solved. And it means that both people have to change to meet the needs and desires of the other person. And that's codependency. I will only feel loved if you do X, Y, and Z in these ways for me because that's what I need to feel loved. And if you don't do those things for me, then I don't feel loved. That's codependency. So the psychology, well, one more place in that the needs that we want fulfilled by another person, what we say that we need in a relationship to feel loved, to be happy, that's what's lacking in ourselves. And that's part of the codependency. I need you to provide to me the things that I'm unwilling to provide and do for myself. So there's no responsibility in that, and it creates an enmeshment in the relationship and a dependency on the other person to be for us who we will not be for ourselves. And the beauty of the psychology of relationships, that every relationship is a reflection of me, is that it applies to both women and men. It applies to everyone. So, in answering the question of, do you address any form of accountability to men? Absolutely. While I'm focused on the issues we bring into a marriage with a good man as women that destroy the relationship, when I speak to good men or they come through my course for men, they also have to see that they are the problem. It just looks different. As women, I teach and red pill us to see the truth of how we emasculate, gaslight, and manipulate good men, and then live in camp victim, blaming them for the issues and making them wrong and making them the problem. That's how we are the problem in a relationship. For a good man to be able to change his experience of that emasculation and gaslighting and manipulation, I teach them, you can't live in camp victim, wanting your wife to change your experience, because that's going to keep you stuck. So men have to see they are the problem, but how they see that they are the problem is how they've unknowingly given their power away to their wives. That she knows what's right in the relationship. She's right that I'm the problem. And they get sucked into the blame and the emasculation and the gaslighting that we do in the relationship. So a good man can't change his wife. That's why I tell good men, you didn't marry the wrong woman. You married a woman. And these are the issues and patterns we bring in to a relationship. So you have to make choices based on your experience in your relationship, based on your values and what's important to you, about what your steps forward are. And you also have to learn to no longer give your power away, and that it's on you once you know, and a good man is red pilled to see the truth of what's happening in his relationship, then he has to see, what are the weaknesses in me? What are the weaknesses in me that I allow my wife to make me feel so wrong and bad? Where have I lost my own sense of self? And that's what a good man has to work on. And either his wife will step up and change in response to him getting a backbone and seeing the truth and reality of what's happening, or she won't. But his experience will change based on the strength he's building in himself and the confidence that he's building in himself. And then his experience can change even if his wife doesn't change. So that's the beauty of the psychology of relationships, is that each person has to take 100% responsibility for the problems they're experiencing in the relationship. It just shows up in different ways, and that as men and women, we have to look at things differently. And the reason the psychology of relationships works so well with women married to good men is because of the nature of a good man. A good man is the first to say, I have made mistakes. I contribute to the problems in the relationship. He wants to take responsibility. He wants his wife to be happy. And when we as women change and see our role and patterns and the issues we're bringing into the relationship, a good man will go get the moon and stars and lay them at our feet. But when we're stuck in victim, blaming them for all the things we think that they're doing wrong and our unhappiness in the relationship, we can't even see the ways they're trying. We can't see the ways that they show up and try to give their love and care, because it's never enough. And we don't have that love and care in ourselves as women towards ourselves. So we can't experience it and accept it from our husbands. So when we change, a good man is right there waiting for us, and all the loving, caring parts of a relationship that we're craving, he willingly and freely gives, and he's willing to work on his part and what issues and challenges he knows that he has. And that's how the psychology of relationships work, and that's the accountability on men as well. But we have to really see and be red-pilled to see the truth of how we show up in a relationship as women. So in regards to the research and what studies support what I teach, it's important to know that I have purposely chosen not to be research and academically evidence-based, because I'm not mired in the dogma of the traditional evidence-based relationship models. I am proud that I'm not credentialed and not a counselor and not a therapist, because I haven't been influenced by those theories that keep us limited and stuck in being victims in our lives and in relationships. And I haven't been influenced by those theories and perspectives, which are very ineffective for the marriages that I talk about in the couples I'm speaking to, and the women married to good men. My perspective is based not on research and studies. My perspective is based on my own personal experience and my own marriage and my own journey through life, and based on concepts that were taught to me by my mentor. That was the first person. I was in 7 years of therapy and going nowhere fast. And while it was helpful to an extent for where I was in my 20s and needing to get my adult feet, as I often say, underneath me, it only kept me in my stories of blame and being a victim. And so when I met my mentor at a workshop 11, 12 years ago, and he helped me see I was the problem in my life, that was an awakening moment, because no one had ever presented that kind of perspective to me. And it was the only thing that worked for me to be able to change in myself and become happy in myself. And then that effectively shined through in my marriage to begin to look at how I was the problem in my marriage, being married to a good man. So what I teach is based on my own personal experience, and then the confirmation of my concepts is in working with women and good men over 10 years. I've worked with women and good men for over 10 years with these very concepts, which has proven the perspectives that I teach. The women I work with were most women. There's rare unicorns that were just like open from the get-go. Some of you might be watching, but most women share with me, I was so mad, I was so angry, I was so triggered, but something in them knew that meant there is truth and they needed to follow it, and that they didn't like having to see these things, but they knew they needed to look at them. And so I've never worked with a woman who didn't know herself in the issues and concepts that I teach. And the good men that I work with are struggling with the very problems that I talk about. That's why you will often see through the comments of, do you have cameras in my house? Like you verbatim are saying the exact things my wife has said, because we have the same wiring as women, and this is how we show up in these relationships. So also traditional models and evidence-based models for relationships and couples counseling do not take into consideration the realities of a marriage with a good man and our behaviors with a good man to be emasculating, to gaslight him into being the problem, and to manipulate the relationship and manipulate him to believing he is the problem. It doesn't take any of that into account. And that's why my perspective is very novel and unlike anything else that's out there, is because it's not based in research and it's not based in evidence-based traditional models for couples counseling or relationship work. And that's what makes it so unique and so effective for the people who resonate with my message and my work. And it's not for everyone. So in addressing, I'm looking at the time, this is a longer episode today. So just as a heads up, but getting into the next question, which is how the next two questions kind of go together and how I'm going to answer them, which is, have you been abused in the past? And do you have healthy relationships with women? So the question of have you been abused is one that I've gotten. It's one that I see in comments where people will say things like, this is her trauma response to the abuse that she's experienced in her life, because it's what we do as women with men. We're trying to find something. We're trying to find something in their past that is causing them to react and interact with us in the ways that they are, because we don't want to look at ourselves. But so when people ask if I've been abused and if my content is a result of my abuse, they're just looking for something that explains what has caused me to have such a extreme view, or something that has caused me in their eyes and how they see what I'm teaching through those triggers is that I hate women. And so which I don't, I'm going to get into that next and answering the next question about having healthy relationships with women. They're looking for something to explain this hatred and this extreme view that I have towards women in relationships, searching for something to figure out why I talk about what I talk about. So the answer is no. I've had a pretty normal life. I've not been abused in my childhood. I haven't been abused in relationships with men. I have a normal background with some party years. So that's my past, and this is really born out of my own experience of being red-pilled, which means to see the truth of something, not what we have believed to be true, but being shown another perspective that highlights the truth of a circumstance or reality in life. So I was red-pilled to see I'm the problem with a good man, and open my eyes to the perspective I teach, because it was true, and it's the truth of my experience, and it's what's worked to completely transform and change my relationship with my husband. So then the next question of, do you have healthy relationships with women? Again, that's likely coming from a place of, you must hate women to have this perspective, and you must hate women to teach what you teach. And that's what people will think through a trigger of seeing the circumstance through a false reality as a defensive mechanism to not have to see what's this shaking up in me that I don't want to see about myself. And the reality and the truth is, yes, I have healthy relationships with women, have some phenomenal women in my life that I love and care about very, very much. And that I don't do what I do and teach what I teach to hate on women. I actually do what I do because I am a woman. And when I was blind to my own behaviors and how destructive I was, not only to my husband and other people, but how destructive I was to myself, and how that cut off this wonderful wonderful woman in here that I cut myself off from. As I begin to discover me, see my marriage through a whole new lens, create a healthy marriage, begin to create a healthy life that I love and is perfect for me and that I'm happy in, I want other women to have that. Because I couldn't see. I was stuck in all the cultural perspective and feminist perspective that it's men. So when I had that door open for me and found my own freedom and myself and the positive effects and impacts that had in my life and had in my marriage that I wouldn't have been able to have if someone hadn't shown me another way, I want other women to have that. And I know a lot of women don't hear what I say and aren't going to hear what I say. But the women that have been open and that my message has touched and changed their lives, that's who I do this for, because they're having a whole new experience of themselves. And they're having a whole new experience of their marriage and of their life that they wouldn't have been able to experience if I wasn't out here doing what I'm doing. So I don't care how many women it reaches. What I care about are the women that it does reach and has a positive impact and transformation on their lives. That's why I do what I do. And of course, and also giving a life vessel to good men who have been totally lost and believing they're the problem and not seeing another way and not understanding the reality of what's happening to them. I do this for them as well. But my primary motivation of why I started what I started is so that women could wake up and start to have a new experience of themselves. Because I look around and I see how unhappy and miserable women are and how stuck in blame we have been toward men that we have been fed and indoctrinated into. So I call this the red pill for women, because we have to wake up to see the truth of our behaviors and what we've denied and blinded ourselves to. So what I do is actually the opposite of hating on women. I'm trying to help women, because we can't see what we're doing, because we feel so justified and entitled because we're in victim. And when you are in victim, blaming others for your experience, it's all you can see, and it's what you really believe. So until somebody offers up another perspective to look at things and to help you take responsibility, you can't change. And you are just completely stuck and will always be stuck in that unless somebody helps wake you up. So that's why I'm here to wake women up, because I think women are amazing when we're able to get out of our woman ways and have such unique, wonderful qualities that we get to offer and bring into a relationship with a good man that we can experience in ourselves by outgrowing our destructive woman ways. So thank you so much for the questions. As I said, this is a little bit longer of a episode today, so I know some people might have to sign off. I also want to let Steve and Phil know, if you've got things you got to get to in your Saturday, please know that I understand. There's just a lot to unpack in this, and so I appreciate those that are able to stick around a little longer today, because I want to next get into 7 reasons why your wife won't watch my videos. And helping men understand who have shared my videos or are thinking of sharing my videos but haven't, the biggest roadblock that good men run into. I'm going to take a sip of water. I don't know why I needed to announce that, but I felt the need. So I want to help men understand the real reasons why. Because your wife, you have to know that anytime you try to have any constructive criticism of your wife, which is essentially what the videos are. Hey, this is what I'm experiencing in our relationship. Would you be willing to look at this? This woman explains it really well, and she's trying to help women. That's where a good man's coming from. He's coming from a really good place. And so anytime you have to try to have constructive criticism with your wife, she takes it personally and thinks that you are making her bad and wrong. So when you try to share my videos, which is like constructive criticism, your wife takes it personally and that you are trying to make her bad and wrong, which of course is not the intention of a good man. The intention of a good man is, hey, I'm hurting and this is what I'm experiencing. We haven't been able to solve these issues. I know you're hurting. I see your unhappiness. I think this could really help us. And he has very, very good intentions. But as women, we can't see that. And so when you try to share my videos and we're seeing it as you making us bad and wrong, then what happens is your wife will gaslight you about how horrible you are, that you could even think that my videos or content would apply to her, and then turn it around on you. And then if she's not open and doesn't come around, you sharing my videos goes on her list of ammo of how you have wronged her, and she will use it against you. So what I teach good men is that sharing my videos is a litmus test to see the reality of your wife so that you know how to navigate the relationship based on if she's willing to change or not. So if you can't share my videos, which is common and understandable, and you're scared to share my videos, which is common and understandable, you want to know that's a really big sign of the emasculation that has happened in the relationship. And find the courage to share them, not from a place of your wife is going to take them in and change, but share them to know the reality so that you can get out of the constant gaslighting and blame that you are the problem. What's been fascinating for me and what I do is that men sharing my videos with their wives and their wives not even being willing to watch or getting so angry and upset when they do watch has further proven to me that women are the problem with a good man. Because a good man is trying to solve the problems. That's why he wants his wife to watch. That's his intention. Hey, let's work on this. I found this. I think it could help. And a woman gets so defensive and so angry and won't even watch is further proof she doesn't want the problem solved. If she wanted the problem solved, she'd take the humble pie and watch the video and work through the emotional reaction in it and take it to heart. But we don't want the problem solved. We want them there because they justify our unhappiness. So, getting into 7 reasons why your wife won't watch my videos. Number 1, the biggest reason is she is triggered. A trigger is a defense mechanism to protect ourselves from having to look at something negative about ourselves. And my videos are aimed to highlight the issues we have as women that we bring into a relationship with a good man. But we don't want to see those things in ourselves because it feels vulnerable and emotionally painful. So we stay stuck in the trigger and we're unable to see the reality of the issues we're bringing into the relationship. Most of you who share my videos, your wife will be triggered. I'd say 25% of them will come around to say, ooh, I see the truth in this. I'm going to listen more. And the rest, the 75%, will stay stuck in the triggers, and they're not going to be willing to overcome that and change. The second reason your wife will not watch my videos, number 2, she is entrenched in camp victim. Camp victim is something or someone is to blame for my experience. And in Can't Victim, we see through that lens. And in a marriage with a good man, all we can see are the things that you're doing wrong, all the ways you've wronged us, all the ways you need to change, which is another defense and protective mechanism to not have to look at ourselves and be the ones to change. We don't want to change. We want to stay in the victim story of how you are the problem. Because again, then we don't have to be vulnerable and look at ourselves. And then if we didn't have our victim story of why we're so miserable in the relationship and why you're to blame, if we don't have that story, there's nothing that we can point our unhappiness to. It falls on our shoulders. So the victim story protects that unhappiness, which sounds like, why would we want to do that? But that's because we're allergic to accountability as women and don't want to have to take accountability and have to be the ones to change. We would rather be stuck being unhappy and hold on to our victim story so we don't have to shine the light on ourselves and take accountability. Number 3 of why your wife won't watch my videos, she is a problem-solving avoider. Your wife is a problem-solving avoider. This is a big difference between good men and a big difference between women. Good men are problem solvers. Tell me what to do. What's the problem? What's the solution? I will do it. And as women, because we don't want to take accountability, we want the problems intact to be able to point something or to be able to point to our unhappiness. We do not want to solve problems. We want the problems there. And so good men need to know that your wife does not think like you. You see the problem, you watch my videos, oh my gosh, this woman has a solution. I can take this to my wife and we can solve this problem. But she doesn't want the problem solved because that would involve looking at herself and changing and taking accountability. Number 4 of why your wife won't watch my videos. Number 4, she is burying her head in the sand and does not want to deal with anything. Again, she doesn't want to look at herself. She doesn't want to be vulnerable. And she expects that the marriage should just work out. And if it's not working out, she doesn't want to have to face the issues and what would go into changing them. So she wants to keep her head buried in the sand and not look at the problems and issues and just pretend and avoid that they are not there. Number 5 of why your wife won't watch my videos. Number 5, she did not marry out of a desire to be accountable and work hard to make the relationship work. As women, we get married to get something out of it. What can you give to me? We don't get married of what can I put into this to make it work. It's what's in it for me, because we are so selfish and only thinking of ourselves. So once we are unhappy and you're not providing what we thought you should be providing to make us happy, there's no reason to work on the marriage and put anything into it. Because her attitude is, he's not giving me what I want, so why should I put in anything to make the marriage work? Number 6 of why your wife won't watch my videos. Number 6, she believes in a 50-50 relationship model. And if you're not doing your part, then she's not going to do her part. And you have to go first. So she, again, is seeing you through that lens of being a victim, that you're the problem, and feels justified, if she's willing to even be honest with herself, that she's not doing her part. She feels justified and entitled to that because you're not doing your part. Marriage is 50-50. If he's not going to do his part, I'm not doing mine. And then she tells you, or tells herself, that if she's going to do her part and change and do the things you want her to do, then you need to go and change first. But even in that, she's stuck in victim, so she's still only going to see all the ways that you are disappointing her. and the problem in the relationship, and the goalpost will move further and further and further away. And number 7 of why your wife will not watch my videos, number 7, she is not emotionally invested into the relationship. As women, we don't make an emotional investment into the relationship because we are scared of getting hurt. And so we stay in a mode of wait and see how it goes. So we're not committed and all in, willing to do whatever it takes to make the relationship work. We always have one foot in and one foot out because sadly our vows didn't mean anything. As women, we want the wedding and put no thought into understanding we're actually making a commitment and actually making vows to another person, and that we have a role and responsibility to fill those vows. We often get married as a checklist. It's the next thing that I need to do in my life. And so there's no emotional investment into it. One, we don't want to get hurt and protect ourselves by being one foot in and one foot out. And we didn't get married for the right reasons and didn't commit to the vows that we were making or even want to realize that we were making vows. So those are 7 reasons that your wife won't watch my videos, and probably could have come up with a number more, but needed to watch the time and everything else that I got to talk about today. So, and talking briefly as a solution to women, if your husband shares my videos with you, he is a good man, which the majority of you are married to good men, you need to know he's sharing the videos from a place of good intentions, of wanting to solve the problems. He's not trying to make you wrong or bad or attack you. What happens is we get triggered and we feel attacked and we feel that we're being made to be wrong and bad as a defense mechanism. That's the response and reality we see through our trigger as a defense mechanism and protective mechanism to not have to be vulnerable and see the not kind ways that we show up, that we have hidden from ourselves or that we have justified and feel entitled of how we show up with our husbands, being controlling, distant, walled off, making them wrong, constantly blaming them for the issues in the marriage, which weakens a good man and makes him feel really bad about himself, and he feels wrong. And it's not what you think it is when you're willing to take the flashlight out and look at the behaviors you bring into the relationship. We tell ourselves it's going to be too painful to see those things about ourselves. I'm here to tell you firsthand experience, constantly working through triggers. It's just part of my path and what I teach and what I do, and being a true teacher. It's what sets you free. And you can't change the behaviors you bring into the relationship if you're not willing to look at them and be honest about them and yourself. And like me, I needed someone to point out the unhealthy behaviors I was bringing into my marriage because I wasn't going to see them on my own. So eat the humble pie. Embrace your husband sharing my videos to see unsavory things about yourself, but that then you can be empowered to change, and it will make your marriage so much better, and your husband is willing to take responsibility for his part and role and will be right there waiting for you. So that's my encouragement to women. And we get stuck in our triggers and can't get out of our behaviors because we stay stuck in victim. And so part of the path to being honest with ourselves and seeing the ways we are showing up is to move from camp victim to camp take responsibility. And that's what I teach women to do in my happiness program. It is a profound transformational program, but I teach it in a gentle way to go from camp victim to camp take responsibility. And that would be a wonderful place to start if you come around and are open-minded to my message and want to work on the issues your husband is trying to help you see that you're bringing into the marriage. And you can find the link to that course in the description below. And to good men listening, the solution is I encourage you to share my videos, because it is a litmus test to see the truth and reality of your wife, if she is going to be willing to change or not, so that you can take that reality and manage the relationship the best you can, or see the truth and reality if your wife isn't willing to change, and make a choice for yourself of whether it is within your values to stay, or you need to make a plan not to stay and to leave the relationship. And then that way you're not a victim waiting for your wife to change. You can see, is she going to be willing to change or not? And if not, then you have to accept that reality so that you are not a victim, and then you can know you're not the problem. You're willing to look at yourself, you're willing to change. You want to solve the problems. That's why you bring the videos to your wife. And if she shuts it down and stays angry, then you can know she's the one that's not willing to work on the issues and problems that you are experiencing and trying to bring to her attention. And then it's a sobering truth to come to, but a really important one for good men, so that you don't get stuck in camp victim. I have a full episode. It's episode 23 and called Warning: What Men Need to Know About Sharing My Videos with Their Wives. And that is a great place to start if you are ready to take that step. And then I also have a course for good men to help you see the reality of your marriage and the relationship with your wife, and to go through a step-by-step process to responsibly and respectfully take your power back and rebuild your confidence and strength, so that you can have clarity on the relationship and no longer give your power away to your wife. And the link to that course is in the description below. So thank you guys so much for hanging in there with me today. Please give this video a like, share it if you know someone that it will help, and please consider subscribing if you are not already. I'm going to take a peek over at the comments here, see what's going on there, and yeah, that's what we're going to do. All right. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Phil. Phil is so generous, both in his time and just support of the channel. Great show and content today. So happy that you guys enjoyed it. And then Karen, your dedication and care for your perspective and desire to help good men and good women comes through. Bless you and Adam, making marriages better one family at a time. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Yeah, great. Thank you, Rhode Island Street Preaching. Appreciate your message, Karen. I think a lot of the advice from the counselors is garbage. Coming from a single man who hasn't married, your advice is the best. I love it. Thank you, guys. And to Just Wendy Sports Center, thank you for your contribution as well. I think I got them all. And then I know Phil's going to send me some comments. I probably won't get into a ton of questions today just because I've got longer. And Adam and I've got some plans this afternoon that we are looking forward to. We have many questions and comments. So what I will do, if I don't get into many here today, based on the time, okay, is that I will save them and get into them later. But let's get into some of these comments. These are great. From Carolyn: my husband shared one of your videos. I've been tuning in ever since. Bless you. So wonderful. See, they're out there, guys. They're so out there. And Monica, I love your content. It keeps me grounded and accountable. Thank you, our buyers. Love the honesty, objectivity, and truth that leads to the healing caused by the poison of the feminist movement. which has not been feminist at all. Well said. Thank you, Karen, for your love and instruction. You're very welcome. Brad, Karen is such a good advocate. I really appreciate her. Thank you so much. Auto Engineer Videos. Good day from Australia. I've actually made it to a live stream. So glad that you could be here. And thank you to everyone who is here live. Thanks, Major Sam. I so appreciate you saying that you are not balanced, Karen. Yeah, just calling it out on the surface. It really doesn't look balanced. Good question, W. Shaw. I'll answer that very briefly. I've touched on it before. How much of this female dysfunction is a modern problem? My perspective and what I see to be true is that while certainly modern issues of feminism and other modern day experiences and circumstances in our world exasperates our female dysfunction. I like that phrase. However, these issues have been going on with us as women in our wiring since the beginning of time, which is why we can look to Solomon and his quote of, "I'd rather sleep on the pitch of a roof than in a room with a quarreling wife." And there's many iterations of that, which shows this has been going on since ancient history. And there's very many other examples of that as well. On my shelf behind me, I have the Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer, which when read through the lens of what I teach about is fascinating to see our woman ways, and our woman ways being a huge tipping point for the basis of those books, if you look carefully. So that's my take on that. Yeah, so many good things, guys. Yeah. Well, thanks, Holly. Yeah, just reading through some. Thank you guys so much for your comments and questions. I'll save these just real quick. EOD Tech 21. We know what a good man is, but what's a good wife? I actually have one of my early episodes on what is a good wife, something like that, that you should go check out under the live tab of the channel, and that's a good wife. So thank you guys so much for joining. I'll pop back over to the chat. Xavier Garcia, thanks for that question. When are you going to write a book? So I'm in the process, but now I understand writer's block and the challenges of writing a book when you've never written a book before. So it is still in the making, and is absolutely happening, and plan that many more books will come after the first book, but I'm running into some of my own challenges, and now it's the holidays, and I'm a woman and learning the realities of writing a book. So please know it's coming, it's in process, and I'm very excited about that. So thank you so much. Luke, thanks for sticking around, and Steve and Phil, and the amazing job you guys do in the chat. Patriot Defender, thank you for being here today. Yeah, I agree, Luke. It's great that the women in here are speaking loud, much needed. Yeah, Karen needs y'all's support. Yep, be loud. I like it. Thank you so much, Luke. And yeah, I think that's gonna be a wrap for today, guys. So I hope everybody has a lovely weekend. Thanks so much for being here today, and yeah, I'll